X DAO podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to the Deus Ex DAO podcast, a place where some of the most progressive and innovative builders, thought leaders, and traders in the crypto space come together to discuss all areas of the crypto industry. Whether you're into DeFi, Layer 1s, Layer 2s, NFTs, or anything in between, we've got you covered. And as a reminder, nothing said on this podcast should be construed as financial advice or as a solicitation to buy or sell any digital asset or security. The comments, views, and opinions expressed by the hosts or guests on the podcast are their own. As always, you'll need to do your own research. Now, with that out of the way, let's get to the episode.
Welcome to another Deus Ex DAO podcast. We are joined by Blocmates and Jedi Blocmates from the Blocmates community. And we're going to talk today about where we see DeFi is going. It's a little bit of an open chat about where we see the space progressing, and we might touch several topics. We could go into deep, so feel free to catch up with us on Twitter or inside the communities if you still have some questions afterwards. Hey, Blocmates. Hey, Jedi. How are you doing?
Hello, how are you doing? Thank you for having us. I don't know, you'd have to be kind of mentally deranged to want to invite both of us on at the same time. So yeah, thanks for having us.
I was wondering what he was thinking when he said, come join, let's talk about DeFi. But Aperture, it's nice to see you again and chat to you. It's been a while. Quite interesting that interview that we originally did, way back, it feels like 100 years ago when, we kind of like when I started working with Grant and things started get going, and you actually interviewed us, and it was like, well, who are you guys? What are you doing? And it's nice to be back, and it's nice to be with you.
Yeah, it was good to have like that follow-up because we went deeper into the bear market. We see these projects currently building, and when the dust settles, you can see where the gold is. So hopefully we can define what gold we are seeking currently. But before we do that, could you tell the listener who is not familiar with Blockmates what Blockmates actually is, or who Blockmates is, because there is a slight difference in that.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Grant. I was the original founder of Blockmates. It's primarily a content platform. If I've probably told this story a million times, but I was a little bit. I'm really lazy, right? So I was kind of sick and tired of people asking me the same questions all the time, and decided, well, if I've already got this understanding, I'm a bit of an explorer in DeFi. I like to try everything out. So I think that's kind of one of the main ways that you can kind of stumble upon nuggets of gold, as you quite rightly said. But yeah, in doing that, I felt the need to kind of document it so I could just pass over a document as opposed to trying to repeat myself day in, day out for everything. So from there, we started spinning up just basic how-to articles, and then we've progressively went on to it kind of looks more like retail-friendly research reports, but there's definitely something in there for the kind of OGs and the super nerds of the space as well. So that's me, and that's the kind of overview of the platform.
And because he's so extremely lazy, he needed somebody to come and help him out. So he asked me to come and help him out, and now we've got this thing. I'm not entirely sure what it is, but it's grown into more than just a content thing. We've got this community. We've got this amazing community that is the Blockmates community, and has ultimately, become very much a part of who we are. And, it's all about that information. It's all about seeking out the alpha. And in that process, we've also taken on the role with many of our friends in the space who happen to be founders and happen to, start all these projects where we've taken on a bit of an advisory role as well. Obviously it involves a lot of tequila and a lot of persuasion, but they somehow, bring us on and we give them our perspective on their projects. So yeah, Blockmates has become very much a part of, what DeFi is about. And, Web3 and finding the independence within ourselves to go out there and get that information, share it, and then to use that information to empower projects to be better, and to create the sustainability that I think this last bull run taught us is really important. Because if you don't have sustainability, what do you have, within your project? So for, all the apes out there that, are still backing projects that are still around, there's a lot to be said for projects that are still around, especially with the tough time that this bear market has brought about.
And we'll surely tap into that topic of sustainability and use case inside crypto later on. But surely from an outside perspective, you as the two main people I talk to from the Blockmates community, it all sounds but lazy. You do a lot of content, community managing, and working with these projects. So it's definitely something to watch in this space. I think I wanted to start with the topic of the multi-chain thesis, basically, where we see a lot of these chains in crypto that are interconnected currently. There is an interoperability thesis where these chains are connected, where apps live on the chain they perform best on, but are connected with other chains, or chains are abstracted away and the user just sees a website or an interface that is connected to the blockchain, but don't even know what chain they are connected to. What's your view on where the space is going with regarding to cross-chain, and what kind of apps we would see in that future?
Yeah, this is kind of one of my main kind of focal points in areas of real interest, because on one hand, a really good narrative, particularly what I've picked up over the past couple of weeks, and probably even earlier than that, is there's an awful lot of projects building on top of Layer Zero. There's an awful lot of projects that are building into those guys. And then there are also an awful lot of projects that have a similar sort of kind of product offering that are flying under the radar and maybe have some even greater functionality. I won't kind of show my bags on air or anything like that, but if you look at some of our articles over the past few months, you might be able to dig a few out. But I think the wider interest for me is in what's becoming more and more apparent and more kind of ingrained in my idea of how the whole DeFi landscape will play out is just looking at the kind of appchain thesis and understanding that one specific blockchain won't necessarily house absolutely every piece of infrastructure, every DeFi protocol, every NFT mint. So the Cosmos guys have been building slow, but that whole ecosystem of kind of application-specific blockchains, and even further afield than that, kind of connecting the Cosmos hub and all the blockchains within it to the more EVM native chains, and further afield towards Solana and these kind of new VC cash grab chains that are about to spin up. So that's what I'm seeing. So like kind of TLDR of there's a lot brewing on the kind of cross-chain interoperability messaging layer with regards to kind of Layer Zero, and a few others. And then again, on top of that, it's the appchain thesis seems to slowly be coming to kind of fruition, in my opinion.
So I'm not going to expand upon that because Grant's the one who's done the research on the cross-chain stuff. But I think it just comes down to the obvious thing for me, that the further TLDR for that is like, what's the most secure and what is the most cost effective, and what's the path to least resistance, and that's where it's all going to go, right? I mean, it's and 100% Grant has hit the nail on the head. There isn't one road to nirvana in this whole technological landscape that's currently playing out. It would be naive to think that it's just about ETH or Bitcoin or Cosmos. There's so much that's happening. There's so much research. There's so much incredible innovation that's happening, and it's all about understanding who's all playing in the space. And sure, there's going to be a whole lot that aren't going to make it, but it's definitely not going to just be one, not for a very, very long time. And in terms of what decentralization is, almost certainly there will not only be one.
Yeah, I agree with that. We've seen several of these parties, like also Li-Fi, Socket, working on cross-chain messaging and cross-chain liquidity. We've seen Circle lately going cross-chain with their USDC, minting and burning, basically. And I think that will open up even more possibilities. But it's a very slow-moving field where projects need to change their tech a little bit. They need to first build their own project on their chain. But if they want to do features from other chains, they have to use and understand the tech that's within these projects. So there's also a business development game, not only the programming part, but also understanding like, hey, which chain do I need? And is there enough liquidity? What other projects can I connect to? What smart contracts do I have to call? So it's not only that the team of programmers needs to understand the tech, needs to understand what the code does, needs to make the code work, test it, of course. But you also need like the human capital that's required for connecting projects to the right projects. So I think that's also why it's moving a little bit slower, because the space has expanded very fast, but catching up with all the information is a little bit slower. But I can surely see that there will be eventually these chains that abstracted away. Like we've seen Synapse, where there is already like good liquidity, so projects don't have to search that, and then you can build your project basically on Synapse. So I think there is another level from where we started, I think a year ago, where these cross-chain and interoperability projects started, where we now see people also working from that business development point of view. So that's I think interesting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the whole sign-ups, like it was one of those funny things where everyone kind of knew that like the sign-up chain was coming for quite a while. But until we hit like peak mania again, I don't think we'll see how powerful that can be. Because obviously they're just effectively a liquidity black hole, aren't they? It's a great product. But again, I think they're kind of shifting away now and trying to get everything away from kind of wrapped assets. Ideally, everyone has native assets on destination and source chain, but that's going to take some doing. As you say, it takes a lot of time. Security issues, that's something that comes up. It's just another week. There seems to be another bridge hacked. That can be a problem, particularly if you're an LP on those specific chains that require that. So the idea of moving towards like the messaging layer with the likes of layer 0 is important, but again, it's new tech. It hasn't been extensively battle tested as some of these that are already on the market, and they've kind of stood the test of time up until now, touch wood. But I think what you were saying about kind of having the kind of manpower and having to catch up to the tech to have those kind of the resources around to actually build an ecosystem. I think Layer 0 have definitely picked up on that. I mean, their website has its own kind of, if you're on a website and it's like, you've been here for 2 minutes, do you need any help? They've got their own kind of developer tool that reaches out to people that are on the website and having a look at their documentation and stuff like that. So that's really important. Every project I know that is building on top of those guys have only spoke extremely highly of them. I'm sure that a lot of that stuff goes on behind the scenes with a lot of other chains as well, but I think the dev help is, as you say, it's something that doesn't necessarily scale because there's only a finite number of people that can actually relay that information, but to the degree that it's needed to actually build something like really, really valuable on top of. But I'm sure they'll get there. It'll just become part and parcel of the space, in my opinion.
Yeah, and like I remember a moment in like 2020, 2021 where just a new chain would spin up and you would long the exchange or a lending platform and it would go up. But currently that's basically the basis of all these chains. So you can't spin up a chain and expect it to get traction. You need a DEX, you need a lending platform, and from there you can build further. And of course, the first other projects are some NFT derivatives, like whether it's Aptos Punks or whatever. That's just something on the side, which is not really necessary. But I think that's also why it just takes longer, because there needs to be some basic infrastructure. For example, like Optimism first focused on getting DeFi traction on their chain and having that in place, which basically led to a rally also in Optimism price earlier this year. But also it was a smart move to get more TVL on the chain. So we'll probably see other chains do that too, like Synapse Chain, and probably Aptos. Like they are already building an ecosystem while all of that is still in testnet. So that's interesting to see.
Yeah, I think we'll probably even see a kind of rerun of the optimistic roll-ups on like the ZK layer as well, because I was at a Starknet event. That was great. Those guys are really cool. Also ZK Sync, that looks like it's near enough, not ready, but there or thereabouts. I think there's probably a lot to learn about how Optimism and Arbitrum have gamified that whole kind of go-to-market strategy. I think Arbitrum probably did it a little bit better, in my opinion, with the whole, the whole Odyssey thing. No token yet, a lot of speculation, a lot of activity happening over there. So I think we'll probably see that revised on the ZK space. And what you're saying is exactly true. Is they've probably recognized that you need stuff to do when you're there. Like you're not going to get retention of liquidity. You're not going to get the sticky liquidity over there if there's one or two protocols that are just copy past the forks of something that they can get on any other chain. But if you go and have a look at the ZK Sync or the Starknet apps they're basically ready to go. I think they're waiting for a few patches to deploy on the ZK layer, and then there's literally a full ecosystem, and I'm not just meaning like one DEX, one money market, one kind of perps protocol. It's like it's all singing, all dancing. So again, that kind of lends itself well to once you get over there, it's like, well, I can probably stay here because there's going to be good incentives. There's a lot of good products. The actual consensus and the actual application layer is great, so let's stick around. There's some out on the market at the minute that they need to do a little bit more business development work or even attract the right kind of projects over there. But I think if you lay your stall out right from the get go, it's an awful lot easier.
Yeah, and I think that brings us probably to a topic that's quite close to that, what we're and actually who we're building this for. I think the cross-chain world hopefully abstracts a lot of the tedious stuff we used to do and we still do, abstracts that away. For example, bridging funds, where users actually just have a front end and don't really care where their funds live and can use these DEXs across all these chains because every chain has a DEX and they don't have to search for a DEX and have to do diligence and see if the DEX is actually valid, or funds won't be stuck in a pool forever. So I think these are basically all UX improvements from within the crypto ecosystem, because users in crypto actually try to work from their problems. But hopefully it will also bring in new people that think the tech is easier to use, and with less steps, less worry, make it more reliable for doing money transactions or investing or collecting their collectibles as NFTs in games, for example. So I think these are UX improvements, but I think we have quite a way to go. And I used to work in UX testing myself, so I think it's a good development, but I think there are quite some areas where crypto has a lot to gain. But before I continue to rant on that, I would love to know, where do you see like the quickest wins, but also where the most important wins are regarding UX improvement in crypto?
So I think the starting point for me in terms of the understanding and the scope of this very question comes down to, how does the gaming world deal with this aspect? And how important is gaming in terms of the potential adoption of crypto? And I think, it's quite a strange thing to try and bring forward as a comparison. And there's a reason why I've done that, is because I firmly believe that mass adoption in the crypto space is primarily going to come through the development of games that people will play and they won't even know that they're playing on the blockchain. How long that's going to take? It's probably still going to take quite a lot of time, because I think those really good games, as you know, this phrase that's now being coined, are these AAA grade style of game, which is, a massive production with the UI and all the bells and whistles that will allow for a blockchain style game to function accordingly, to the extent that you're not even aware that you're on the blockchain. Coming back to where is it going? Well, I think it needs to go to a place where it is like a video game and it is easy and it's self-explanatory. When you're playing a video game, the last thing you're getting caught up in is, waiting for a transaction to go through. What is MetaMask right now? MetaMask is probably one of the worst and most unpleasant user experiences in the world, as far as I'm concerned. Yet it still is at the epicenter of what is that's going on, and I think I would love to see that change. I would love to see it change, hopefully in the short term, where we are actually looking at wallets that are, way prettier for one. It's nice to be working on an interface that looks really good and isn't as cumbersome and as user unfriendly. I have a theory as to why the UI in crypto has always been so mediocre to really bad, and that is that projects have never been sustainable. They've always been about, the Ponzonomics, short term. Why put all this effort into a UI? I think once we reach a point where projects, and we are fast approaching that era of where crypto is going and where blockchain is going, in terms of, if you want to be in the space, make sure you build a project that is sustainable. And I know that this is a topic that will more than likely come up later on in our discussion, but I think it all ties in together. The gamification, the sustainability, and then being proud of the product that you're putting out there as a developer and as a founder, because you know that it's going to be there next year and the year after and the year after that, because you have a sustainable model to support that. So I think that's what's coming. I think it's inevitable, because we've realized that the Ponzi aspect of this market, sure, it will always be there. People love to gamble. But I think the real value of what's going to happen in this space is, we don't know that we're using blockchain, and it will more than certainly be a product that is useful and has absolute relevance in the space. So there's positive things to look forward to, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's the whole UX, UI, just general experience was potentially why you've seen the CeFi products, one, do so well, but also focus heavily on mobile first, great UI, something that also slips into your iPhone or Android dashboard that just looks like another kind of fintech app. Obviously, for better or for worse, the demise of all those kind of fell flat on its face. But I know for a fact they recognize that their target audience would probably be people who wanted to gain exposure to kind of crypto yield, because that was a new thing to them, but they weren't gonna custody their own assets. They weren't gonna get on chain. They probably weren't gonna use a computer or desktop. So what do you do then? Well, you're not going to get away with kind of the MetaMask UI or a UX on a mobile device, particularly if you've got the likes of, like in the UK, we've got some really, really, really good, I hate to say this, but like some of the kind of banks that have came out of the UK, like your Monzos, Starling, Obviously, Revolut's a little bit further afield than that, but the UX is absolutely perfect. So if people kind of tie connotations to savings and interest rates and the hard-earned savings that they're going to put into an app, it definitely can't look like MetaMask, particularly if it's mobile first. So I think that's where it depends who you kind of aim the product at as well. Like MetaMask, I feel it's kind of intentionally looks like the way it does. We'll probably look back in 5 years and think, Jesus Christ, what were we doing? Even down to the level of copy on like in specific apps like deposit, withdraw, it should just be kind of send, receive, just like really those fine details that if you're first coming into the space and you're not knowing that you can actually send funds to someone else, it's kind of nailing that down. Maybe that's an education point that needs to be focused on a little bit more, but I think the big guys at the top who are building these products and getting their own hundreds of millions of dollars to build them out should be kind of focused on a little bit more. But yeah, I think it really needs to get to the point where you're saying appchain, where it's, and I think the multi-chain world does feed into this. Once that infrastructure is in place there, you don't necessarily understand that you're using a blockchain. You just know you're putting X in and you're getting Y out. I think that's to where it needs to get to, and it needs to be understandable to kind of the average everyday idiot, I think.
But Grant, the what you're speaking about now is it's actually being done as we speak. I mean, it's like you look at like the guys at Change Finance. I mean, they've taken the very ideas that you've brought forward and they've built this app that functions on the phone. They said exactly that, right? They said, well, let's build this app that operates and functions on a mobile phone, and you can basically exchange cross-chain. I think they've got like almost 100 products that you can actually swap out on an app where you wouldn't even know the difference, whether it was a banking app or whether it's their app. It's like one and the same thing, it's seamless. It's really fast. You've got, there's a lot of these kind of protocols that are seeing the importance of, a really functional UI, UX that can deliver their product faster, smoother, and still look really good, which is so completely divorced to what, we've been used to over the last two cycles, this you look at like the stuff that Andre built and the rest of it. I mean, the stuff is just really not that attractive, but because there's the reward there, we kind of put up with it. But I think those days are over. I think that's going to change. And if you look at what Change have done, I mean, you look at what Handle Finance have done on the Forex side of it, they've built beautiful apps, apps that are really good to look at, smooth, functional, fast, and they do the job.
I think Change is indeed a good example of an abstraction of away from all these chains. So I think that's surely a good one. But I think the overall topic of wallet abstraction is one of the most important ones to get also real world traction. I think it's not only that we have to abstract away these chains, but for example, probably a lot of users use different wallets. If they're not, they actually should. But having those accessible through one interface, which of course MetaMask has or other wallets have, but it could be much simpler. And for example, I also like to use Frame, which is a great wallet. I actually don't use MetaMask anymore. But the problem with some of these wallets is that you have to add coins. While, for example, if you use DBank, you can just see what's in your wallet. But I think that's the main problem. We see all these different functionalities spread out between apps. You have either your funds living cross-chain, you either have one wallet, or you have an interface with multiple wallets, or you have insights on what is in your portfolio and how much it's worth. Well, I think a good wallet provider would have all of that. Which basically sounds like I'm promoting centralized exchanges. But it's I think there would be like a Web3 version of those wallets. So abstract abstracting all your struggles away into a simple to use interface. But I think the last comment I want to make on that topic is also like we have the people programming this tech, these wallets, these projects are programmers. So they're really good in optimizing code, deploying that. But they're sitting behind a computer all day, and they can only ask their users what they want through a Discord. They can't actively research that or view how their user is using that. And also, if they ask their community, it's a very specialized community who already knows a lot of stuff in the space, which leaves out the bigger group we actually want to target, and that's the general public. So I think teams would need to add UX developers, UI developers that are specialized in working with people, and try to seek out all the small details where users fail to understand the product. And for example, I have seen some marketing strategies in which basically the onboarding experience isn't even mentioned, or the explanation of how do I deposit on a platform, or how do I work with the basics of this platform aren't really mentioned or simplified. Well, I think that's the first of the part of the funnel you actually want to target, while it's actually missing in a marketing strategy, because the team is so much further in their thinking than the average or beginner user. Well, I think that's the biggest group a project still could target.
Yeah, that's across the board, even not even just from your wallets or anything like that. The real issue with what we talk to kind of projects and builders and like friends in the space about, it's one of the real issues is like these people who build this tech stack and all these great products, is because they're so far into the weeds and this is the day to day, they don't kind of take a step back and think, well, if we want to get like the largest amount of users as possible, which if you're a product you probably should be aiming for, it's what we tend to find is people who are like building all this kind of everything within the space, they have this kind of flaw of information where they can't digest or reiterate their ideas or their content or anything lower than that ceiling or that floor. Sorry. So because they're so kind of smart and they're just in the weeds with this all day every day, they don't understand that the vast majority, even the 99.99% of people on the planet, are still kind of figuring this thing out. But as you say, making that onboarding process as easy as physically possible is a huge thing that's completely overlooked, which is why we try to cover as many projects that are net positive for the space as possible, because we know from kind of farming information from our Discord, there's an awful lot of people that are looking for that content, but it kind of gets neglected from a lot of projects in the space. And like not some, but the vast majority of projects and providers and builders do kind of neglect that information. But I mean, we're happy to cover it, but like it should be kind of part and parcel of your go-to-market strategy, I think.
I think we should also look into the topic of what is then another real-world use case here, because we always talk like getting retail on board or getting more institutions in. And even if we have a good user interface or a good experience for all these users, we might actually miss that it also needs to be useful for those users to get them on board. And crypto, of course, has a history of being highly speculative. Lots of gambling, lots of Ponzi's, lots of memes, which are fun, which, it's a fun game to play. But also for some people, a sad game to play. There will always be winners or losers. But I think the most important feature of new technology is that it can be used to bring humanity further. So even if it's a small optimization or gives the people more power, or another use case, we should try to use the technology. And the question is, like, what's that here? Even if it's something that is not working, traditional finance that we can fix in crypto, or as Jedi said, like, hey, we can have new types of games, like we can have AAA games, but with added crypto features, for example. Like, what use cases do you see that we could build with the tech we currently have in crypto, and basically invite those people over?
I think the biggest one right now, there's two big ones actually. I'll cover the gaming side, and then Grant can cover the kind of like the financial aspect side of it. But from the gaming side of it, like the real and most beautiful thing about what blockchain can offer is ownership. The ownership in the decentralized sense of the word is that, in the past we had the scenario where individuals would spend thousands of hours, like invested into a World of Warcraft account, for example. And this isn't an indictment on World of Warcraft, because, it's an amazing game. And I think that Blizzard just, for the most part, did pretty much everything right. It's probably one of the most successful games ever. But the one thing that you can't do in World of Warcraft is take ownership of that account, your characters, your items, and all that kind of stuff. And that's one of the reasons why Ethereum was created, and the idea of Ethereum came about is because, Vitalik was unhappy about the fact that, he didn't have ownership of that rare item that his warlock, like gained in or won in the game. So I think that's primarily the driver. Once again, I am advocating how important, the whole gaming versus onboarding on a massive scale is. And I think that's at the center of it. And the center of it is that, imagine being able to continue to trade your account, and that account can then be traded in perpetuity around, not only has 1,000 hours been spent on this particular account or this particular character, but maybe 10,000 hours, and it's 15 years later. And yes, believe it or not, there are computer games that have been around for that long, that are still extremely popular, are played, ferociously and very actively. And I think that by having just that one aspect brought into the whole mix, you are just creating a whole different market space, and a whole even more of a desire for people to play those games, level up accounts. And just that market alone, I think, will be huge. Gaming already, as we all know, you don't even have to go and do a Google search. It's one of the biggest industries in the world. And by being able to own your account and to be able to take that to market is such a strong and like such a motivating factor within the space. And then there's all the other offshoots that come from that. But I'll just, let Grant comment on, what is DeFi, decentralized finance? Well, what products are you going to bring into the mix? It's not rocket science.
Yeah, for me, like everything just comes back to that whole kind of democratizing kind of financial products for anyone on the planet, anywhere. Like I'm just I optimize my full life just around having as much freedom as physically possible, hence living in different countries for the past however many years. But yeah, I just love, like, I know it's a bit of a meme and people talk about it and people shout it from the rooftops as soon as they start getting into this space, and they're doing it for the right reasons, because they've kind of had their eyes open to how great it is. So it's, for me, everything just boils back down to kind of democratizing the access to kind of financial markets for absolutely anyone, wherever they are. But again, that comes back to our UI UX thing. If it's easy for everyone to do it on their phone, and we can get it to that point, I think that's where we're going to probably see a huge kind of uptick in users and use cases and things like that as well. But I kind of think maybe a little bit more further afield than that. You real world use cases, something that's quite kind of topical for me, having a kind of research scientist background, was the kind of the VitaDAO, however you want to pronounce it, and their kind of, outsourcing, forming a DAO structurally around kind of the longevity research package. And I think as much as we've seen 2017 and 2018 be a bit of a shit show with regards to wanting everything to come on chain, and people were probably raising millions of dollars to have decentralized Uber and fucking Dentacoin and all that rubbish. I think now there is kind of infrastructure for not those products as what I've just mentioned, but more kind of inventive and products that are kind of net positive for kind of like global humanity, if you will. But like, I think we'll start to slowly push towards that. I think VitaDAO, LightDAO, probably a good example of what is kind of possible. There's going to need to be incentives around that. People don't just do that kind of stuff long term for the fun of it. I know some people do. You could argue Wikipedia has been upkept by community for so long, but horizontally, I don't think that necessarily works. So there's going to need to be kind of incentive structures around that. But then you've kind of seen these big pharmaceutical companies come in, and that's piqued their interest as well. So I think there's something to be said for keeping an eye out with regards to stuff like that. And if anyone is building that sort of stuff and it is kind of a more scientific research burst, then get in touch, because I want to speak to you as well.
All very valid topics, and I think I fully agree. First on the gaming thesis, basically, where we see games coming to the blockchain or using blockchain technology to have collectibles. Let's make Vitalik proud. Let's impress him, as the meme said. But I think games have also a opportunity to have new sections, like new technology, which always has happened. Like currently we try to fit blockchain to games, like trading card games on a blockchain, so we can trade these electronic pieces, or having items in game we can easily trade, not only in the game but on the market, and use it in other games as well. But I think there will be new games themselves, new games we haven't thought about that uses technology. So really looking forward to that. But also I think, and that slightly is related to that, I think I'm also really interested in how communities will form and how companies will form. And we currently see that, for example, that's how we came together. We both have communities. We're a group of people also working in this space, and we basically decentralized work, whether it's we get information from others or we get assignments from others, but we can work together on that by sharing our information and sharing our skills. And I think one of the best things about this space is that you can basically pick the people you're working with. Like in more traditional companies, you apply for a company and then you can choose who you're working with. But in crypto, you can actively see the community, see the people who you're interacting with, and then get, build your place in that community by showing your work and having them like you or think you're useful. And I think that's such an amazing development where you can work with the people you like and think are valuable. Instead of just dealing with them and maybe liking some of your colleagues. I think this is such more net positive for the workforce too. And on top of that, the blockchain makes it possible because you can easily transact. Of course, you have to take care of your own accounting and taxes. So that's probably another problem to solve. But I like that. It makes communities also decentralized, and basically that's what I like about all these anons running around. Doesn't matter where you're coming from, how old you are, as long as you have something interesting to say or are contributing to the vibe of a community. You are a decent human being, and you are valued to the community. So really, really bullish on communities, but also probably tools that make it possible. There's always a fine line between tracking behavior and evaluating that, and also incentivizing that, but also privacy. So that's a topic where I think there needs to be a lot of discussion, and I think we should have that discussion more often. But I think, through experimentation, as we always do in crypto, and throwing insane amounts of money into these projects and see them all fail and learn collectively from that, we'll probably get there. But let's not have this as a final message. Hopefully you have a better final message to this podcast on what you want to give back to the listener, and what you hope this space eventually will become.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that the space is developing, I always think like net positive will always work out like net bad in the majority of places, to be honest. But like for anyone who kind of still sitting not on the sidelines, but they're kind of dipping their feet in, but they're seeing people kind of these operators in the space and think, oh, I could fancy a little bit of that myself. There's countless opportunities. It's just the same as like the real world. Just go and speak to people that that you like. As you say in appchain, you can kind of effectively choose who you want to work with. There's so much to be done, even despite this being quite a long and boring bear market that could potentially go on for a little while longer. It's just a great space to kind of be a part of near enough every kind of day, and then you kind of meet folks like yourselves, and you can kind of strike up a relationship and work alongside these kind of people as well. So it's a bear market, but it's a good bear market if that makes sense, particularly if you're kind of building stuff. And it doesn't have to be kind of world changing. We kind of just do content and kind of lend our opinion to projects in the space and things like that. So I guarantee if you're valuable in the real world, quote unquote, there's almost certainly some place for you to kind of add value in this space. So it's just my 2 cents on it.
I think the DeFi space it's beyond opportunity. It really is like another gold rush. But for me, it's also about being patient. That's what Grant is saying. There's this opportunity to build, and build doesn't necessarily mean that you've got to be the person that's coding. Build means that you're working on the different strategies that might be available, and you might not know what those strategies are right now. You might not have an absolutely no clue what is going on out there, but that's part of building. You building your understanding, your relationship with people in the space. Find the right people. We've spoken about this so many times. Having your tribe and having the right people around you is absolutely critical to furthering yourself in the space. Build that. Build who you are and where you are in the space, and understand how the space works. That's one of the reasons why we've been successful as Blockmates, is that we've almost taken all this time to formulate an approach to how to understand what's going on in the space. And it's there. It's all free. You can go and read it. Read enough of our articles and you'll figure out exactly what it is that you need to do and what will work for you. As the space evolves, we build, and that's what makes the space so exciting. I mean, I've been in business for many years, and I've never been more excited about where things are going in a particular space, like I have been with, blockchain and crypto. And it's all come about because there's, let's pause. I don't have to make it all back in one trade. I don't have anything to prove to anyone. All I need to do is just figure out what works for me, who the right people are, and then just go out and make it happen.
Exciting times indeed. And yeah, we are still in a bear market, but as you can hear, we are bullish DeFi, bullish communities and also connecting to great people. So let's keep building, experimenting, and researching. Thank you, Blockmates and Jedi Blockmates, for joining me in this open discussion. If the listeners want to know more, where can they find you?
Yeah, thanks again for having us. You invite us on any time, and we want to have you back on as well. So thanks again for having us. But at Blockmates, DOTCOM, so at blockmates.com. Someone pinched my handle and got kicked out my account, so I've got that one now. And then all the links for everything we kind of do will be in the link tree in my bio. You can't find me, it should be just as easy to find Jedi as well, just on Twitter. But yeah, all the links are just in the bio.
Blockmates.com. Just go there, and it's all there. Just take a look, but read our stuff, and you'll find your way to us. It's not difficult, and our Discord is free. It's open. There's a ton of alpha that's floating around in there. Twitter's the same. We're here to share that info, and we share it gladly. And yeah, we look forward to meeting you guys out there and to new friendships. And thank you, Aperture, for having us. You guys are awesome what you do in the space, and we appreciate you. Thank you, sir.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, make sure to visit their website and join our community so you know what we've been talking about and what great people they're interacting with in their Discord server. Thank you for listening to another Deus Ex DAO podcast, and speak to you in the next episode. Bye-bye.